Well, hello. I am joined today by Liz Gray, Nathan Dickerson, David Glade, and Jerry Brown. These four in their churches have partnered with Morgan Reed as he's planting in the Franconia Springfield community. And I wanted to have this conversation with them because they obviously believe in church planting, and I just want them to share why they do and how it is that they have come to be partners with Morgan. So, Liz, let me start with you. Um, you are a church planter yourself, so I know that church planting is important. But why don't you say, in your own words, what does church planting mean to you? Why do you think it's important?
Thank you, Tom. Well, church planting, I think that most people uh, thrive in evangelism when they're kind of on the edge of the bubble. And so people who are newest to faith are often the quickest ones to begin to reach out to their friends and neighbors. And so I tend to think of church life as being a bit like a bubble, and the surface area of the bubble increases your capacity to reach people. And so lots of little bubbles have a greater surface area than one bubble because people, once they're in a church, tend to get more and more involved in church life. And so, in terms of evangelism and reaching people who haven't ever heard the gospel, I think church planting is absolutely invaluable because you put a smaller church right in the center of a community and you have a greater chance of reaching the people in that area. So, church planting seems to me to be one of the most effective ways of reaching more people with the gospel.
Thank you. Nathan, talk a little bit to us about church planting. You've been a church planter yourself, and now you are at Restoration, which is planting churches out of Restoration. Liz is a great example. She's Incarnation came out of Restoration, and you have plans to do other church plants as well. So, talk to us a little bit about why you think church planting is important and why you encourage folks at Restoration to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to that, Tom. And I think in terms of, I'll just use Liz as a great example. A couple years ago, when she got a sense from the Lord that this is what God was calling her to plant a church in the south side of our county in Arlington, she was able to gather a group together and get things started. And what I thought was really neat about it is that there were people who I might describe as peripheral or not super connected with the life of restoration who were able to come alongside Liz and get super invested at Incarnation and help plant a whole new community. And actually, as soon as they were launched out, new people who were also kind of, you might say, sitting in the pews at Restoration, then they stepped up in the spots that the Incarnation people left. And so you kind of see an increase in ministry as we multiply the people who are available to help with church planting. So I think that's a really neat aspect of church planting that a lot of people should consider. Also, just to speak specifically about Morgan, this is exciting because I know Morgan was a part of our congregation, then went with Liz to help plant Incarnation. It's now planting down in the Franconia Springfield area. So it's kind of neat to kind of see his participation both in our congregation at Incarnation and now in Franconia. So excited.
And the way that you just described that too, Nathan, that's the whole effect of church planting is that it multiplies itself, and that's really the theme for us during the synod is how to encourage that kind of multiplication. How it can start with one congregation, go to the next, etc. David, you have been a church planter yourself. You've planted Christ the King, and you now are coming alongside of Morgan. So you are doing some things for him that were done for you when you were planted out of the false church. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about those things and talk about why you have encouraged Christ the King to become a partner for Morgan.
So the things that Christ the King has done to help Morgan, applied to our outreach committee for financial help, and finances are a big part of every church plant or established church, and the outreach committee was thrilled to receive his application and happy to be financial support to Morgan's efforts. Morgan approached me early on in his planning. I thought he asked me if he just was not going to be in the position where youth ministry would be a part of his church, and that's something we've had at Christ the King for some years now. And he asked if his youth or his youth involved in his church could plug into our, and of course, absolutely happy to provide those to open that door for him, and hopefully there'll be further opportunities as well.
Mhm. You know, you're bringing up something that is really important. I'd like to highlight that many churches wonder how they can help, how they can be a partner to a new church plant. And what you just talked about sharing your youth group and allowing the youth at the new church to be a part of it is a perfect example. To you, it may not seem like a lot, but to him and to their youth, it's huge. It's huge because, as all of you know, as church planters yourself, one of the most difficult parts of planting is the fact that you are trying to stand up all these ministries at the same time. So when you have another church come alongside of you, it really makes a huge difference. Jerry, talk a little bit about Shepherd's Heart. You all have also decided to partner with Morgan. Can you talk to us about that and how you're doing that and why?
I was a part of our church startup years and years ago, back in 1994. But I'm the odd man out because I have not been a church planter. It's much more difficult to create something than it is to sustain something. And so it takes also a person that has courage and risk and a definite understanding of this calling in order to be able to be a church planter. And I found that in Morgan. And so when I always like to look after young men, because one of the things is that our culture's changed, and I come from a different generation. And I'm having a hard time basically to understand exactly what it is that we're going to do in order to be able to reach this younger generations coming around. So I'm looking to learn from Morgan as well as to support him. And so therefore, that's I just think that this is our calling. We have been called to be sowers of the word, and he is a young sower, and we can make that sowing more efficient and more effective by helping him. Mm-hmm. And so we can help him with money. We can help him with other resources. If he needs manpower and things of that sort, we can come out there and help him. But basically, this is the future of the church. And I mean, this is how the church started. These are apostles. Yeah. And so therefore, church planters are in line with the very best of what our church has to represent. So that's why we've always been someone to support young leaders to going out.
So one other question I'd like to ask each of you to respond to is to think about how you would encourage other churches to follow your lead. What would you say to them to help encourage them to take this step of coming alongside a new church plant, a church planter, and lending the kind of support that you all are lending? So let's pitch that to Liz. We'll have you start off, and then Nathan, David, and Jerry after them.
Be free, hold your hands open, and allow the Holy Spirit to do what the Holy Spirit's going to do. And no matter how small and young or old and staid your church is, or wherever your church is, there's a potential to be involved in church planting, because there are so many ways, from the teeniest to the biggest, that you can be involved. And it was kind of hard for us when we were only 18 months old to let go of Morgan. And yet that God has blessed him and he's blessed us all at the same time. So don't be fearful. Be courageous.
Great word. Nathan?
Yeah, I guess I would say to people that to consider that God has already given you resources, and he wants you to use those to bless other people. It could be finances, it could be people, it could be simply prayer. If you can pray regularly in the prayers of the people for our planners, I think that is a great resource that you should consider using. So just ask that question creatively. What resources do we have? I'm reminded of the story of the young boy who came to Jesus when he was trying to feed the 5,000. He had a couple loaves and some fish. And Jesus obviously used that to bless so many people. And in the same way, I think our congregations, even if it feels small, kind of like what Liz was saying, it can be very significant in kingdom work.
Great. Thank you.
our mission in our church is that we are to equip the saints and walk with the wounded. And these young missionaries, and that's what they are nowadays, because our culture has changed so much that therefore they are, in fact, even though living here in the same nation, they're missionaries. And so we should pray for them and support them. And when we have the capability to help them and support them like we would any other missionary internationally. And it's a great blessing.
I just want to thank you all. I think that what you are typifying is the type of attitude that we're wanting to inculcate in all of our churches, that we do church planting together, that this is not just the realm of one or two people, but it belongs to all of us. And really, without all of your support, this is a great example. We've got 4 churches partnering to plant along with our diocese, and we have a lot of real exciting expectations about how this church is going to come together. So many thanks to all of you, and continue, I pray, to support Morgan, to inspire others to do the same. Thanks so much.